Hey traders, this is Cousin Vinny coming to you on Sunday evening, the 12th of February at 1:20 p.m. with a look at the week ahead. What we're looking at here is a daily chart of copper, noting the relative strength is starting to turn down after being rejected again at 70. We have Bollinger Bands starting to squeeze, and a very large red candle on Friday with accompanying negative volume, as you would expect. Stochastics is showing a lower move, and MACD is also confirming now. So that's copper. Let's take a look at DBV. DBV, the Currency Harvest Fund, or carry trade, continues to move higher. We did have a test of the shorter period 8 EMA, but we haven't broken down towards the 20 yet. So we're still positive, and we're above the highs of September. Okay, and the EMAs are pointing higher. Stochastics is oversold or overbought, and MACD is starting to flatten out. So we'll keep an eye on DBV as well. Now let's take a look at some of our breadth indicators, because I've been paying attention to these a little bit more of late, since we were watching the S&P 500 cruise higher with the ADX also showing us a higher move. So at the moment I'm looking at the momentum indicators, the McClellan oscillators in this case, to give me a clue as to what we can expect. We're currently flagging on the SPX. We'll get to that in a minute, but you'll note that the breadth has gone negative while we've continued to go higher on the NASDAQ. Okay, so what I'm thinking here is there are less stocks participating in the rally. Okay, so therefore we could see a flag on the NASDAQ as well, or we could see a correction of about 3 to 5%. But the main thing is that we're making higher highs on less participation. Okay, noted here on this chart. The dashed line is the NASDAQ comp. Okay, price performance relative to the advanced decline ratio adjusted. Now the NASDAQ similarly can be viewed with a short-term period moving average, this one being a 5-period EMA, okay, and the summation index, which is also derived from breadth and the McClellan oscillator, simply telling you that our signal line is starting to turn lower. We see the red starting to creep in where it was normally green on this trend up since the middle of December, okay, when the trend began. And now we look like we're going to turn over and possibly give us a sell signal like we had here back in November and again in July. If you remember what happened in July, we had a nice sell-off. Okay, of course we had a buy signal here in December, and we need to look at this with a little bit of caution. Okay, most of my trades are pretty much flat now on the spiders. I have a few long positions, but for the most part I am flat and waiting to see what trend develops here. Now this is the advanced decline on the NYSE. Okay, so we can compare the two, and you can see that we've turned over, and we can see that our advanced decline line has turned lower, where we have a divergence with us having higher prices on the S&P. Okay, as we mentioned on Thursday night's Trader Spotlight show, I'm currently watching the volume at price here, along with the relative strength turning lower, and the test of the shorter term period average. We're still between the upper Bollinger Band and the shorter term period average, with a crossover of the 50 and the 300. Okay, we have the 200 starting to turn, so there's no reason why we can't move a little bit sideways and to down and test the 20 period like we did here at the end of January and bounce. Okay, but for the time being we have an oversold or overbought stochastics, which gave us a crossover, and the MACD is now starting to turn lower as well. ADX is now starting to flatten, and you can see the bullish D plus indicator is turned down, and the bearish D minus is starting to head up. Okay, CCI is turning over, and unbalanced volume is at a high, so I'm not reading too much into this right now. Okay, so that's the S&P daily. Now looking at the comp, we are a bit stronger than the S&P by virtue of the slope of this rally since the October lows, as well as the higher lows here, okay, and the end of November and the middle of December. Okay, I do note the volume at price that we're trading way above this area that was resistance, and very small volume here to resist us, but we are due for a pullback. Okay, at least a sideways consolidation at a minimum. Stochastics is giving us something to be concerned about, as well as MACD. This could very well turn and like it did here, but I'm not going to read into it. I'll just see how the closing prices turn out. And unbalanced volume is really up at the highs. Okay, so volume was decent as well, so we'll have to look at Friday's volume as being less than the previous 3 days, but still something to consider. The Bollinger Bands are headed higher, as well as all your EMAs. Okay, the 50 crossed over the 300, and the 200 are starting to turn higher as well, so we'll keep an eye on that for the time being. The Russell was doing quite well there for a few days last week, and then on Monday gave us an inside day, and then Tuesday an inside day if you compare it to that previous Friday. Okay, all of these candles were within side of this bigger candle here that occurred on Friday last week, not the week before last, and we have since dropped down through the shorter term period moving average, and I'm fully expecting this to test the 20 period. Maybe have a bounce. We'll have to wait and see. Stochastics is turning down and just about ready to give us a sell signal compared to the MACD as well. The MACD looks like it wants to cross. The plus ADX indicator is headed down, and we did flatten as well. Okay, so that's the Russell. Looking at the US dollar, we have to remember we're at support levels here that we saw previously as resistance, and we're pulling away from this lower Bollinger Band. Okay, the EMAs did cross, however RSI is starting to head higher. The stochastics gave us close to a buy signal, and MACD is starting to turn upwards as well as the histogram. Okay, note that when on the ADX, this is a strength indicator, okay, strength of trend. So this downtrend, what the ADX is now telling you, being that it's turning back down, is that the short-term view is that the descent in price on the dollar has started to dissipate its speed, okay, and we could see this turn very easily. Alright, we'll watch the ADX indicator. Note the D plus indicator is starting to turn higher. We could get a crossover as we did back here. Doesn't mean that we're going to go higher, just means that we could get a crossover like we did back here in September when the dollar started to rally. Okay, note that we have higher lows. If this doesn't get back down to this lower level, which I don't anticipate it will in the short term, but it's something to consider in your trades. Alright. Okay, finishing up, let's take a look at the S&P, or excuse me, the ES minis. And of course we have the ADX indicator still rising, and similar to, but not the same as the S&P cash. The ADX indicators are still pulling apart. Okay, haven't turned lower yet, so it's something that we'll keep an eye on. All right. For now, let's look at some fibs, since we now have a pivot from the Thursday high. Okay. Let's take off some of this so that we can see a little more clearly. Okay, so we can see the 50% level and the 20 periods cruising up here as being a likely area for a bounce with the 618 just below it at 1317.51. Okay, now this is not exactly on this low, but it's close. Alright, so this high here is 1352.75 and this low was 1296. So keep that in mind. These aren't exact numbers, but 1317.65 is close for a retest, and the 20 period is moving up. Depending on what happens here in terms of sideways action or pattern, okay, we could see a flag here. Alright, in which case we could anticipate 3 or 4 days of selling into options expiration on Friday that we could get down to the 50% level. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at, 1324.37, with all of the momentum indicators telling us we could and should see something of a pullback. Also, if you're watching the news, you have a lot of bullish sentiment in the markets that needs to be dissipated a bit. Okay, bullish percents are also up at the 75 plus level on the major indexes. Okay, so keep that all that in mind this week going into your trading, and we'll see you in the room on Monday. Take care. Remember to use your stops. Again, this is Cousin Vinny. I hope you enjoyed this video. Talk to you soon.